I want to discuss this with you, get your opinion on this. So, this is a video response from Russell Brand to David Icke. I'll just sort of bring it up a bit.
When Russell Brand calls himself the independent media, the word should stick in his throat. I'm independent media. It doesn't stick in my throat.
Okay, I'm just going to mute it there and also mute it here. And the reason for that is I do want to discuss what David Icke has been saying. And to do that, we need to bring up. Right, so a lot of us would consider David Icke to be probably the original Proclamation king, if you like, as far as conspiratorial matters. And he suffered big time as a result of coming out early as one of the main conspirators in the world. And I really mean that. He has suffered quite a lot. And even Russell Brand will acknowledge that he's been attacked for speaking what is now proven to be very truthful matters. But at the time, 20 years ago or even longer, people just couldn't get their heads around some of the stuff that David Icke was saying. So obviously Russell is a bit rattled with this statement, and he should be really, because David Icke is calling him a professional shill, and a lot of us have also said that could well be the case. To be a really good independent journalist, would you take up an invitation to go to Mar-a-Lago? That's hardly the sign of independent journalism, is it? But as you know, he says later on that yes, he's been there and it's a phenomenal place to visit. So this is not independent journalism, and this is why David Icke has a really good point. And when you read it with me, when Russell Brand calls himself the independent media, the word should stick in his throat. He is fully dependent Trump, Musk, MAGA, and he uses this word arslicker, which Russell doesn't particularly like, and goes into detail about the imagery of someone that's an arslicker. He goes into the imagery of it because I think it's got to him, the fact that David Icke has used that phrase. It is not a nice phrase, is it, to be labelled as? But nevertheless, David Icke, the original Proclamation king, and let's face it, Russell, if anything, was late to the party. Very late. There was a lot of people before Russell Brand that were making statements that Russell has since made a career on. And David Icke being one of them, and then there's others as well. But certainly David Icke, for me, is the Proclamation king on all matters conspiratorial. Okay? That is the label in which I think he is rightly earned. Okay, so, and he goes into calling him a professional shill, a plant. Well, yeah, very possibly. That could be the case. Now he does go into a bit more detail, and where he says he quotes from Alex Karp, co-founder of Palantir, the intelligence and military surveillance tech supplier, in support of his masters, and says Karp is dropping truth bombs. This is the Karp who has bragged that Palantir kills people. Clearly, Mr. Brand has no shame. Is David Icke talking out of tune on this? Well, I don't think he is. I think he's absolutely, yes, hitting that nail right on the head. This is absolutely true. There is no independence, is there, from someone who takes up an invitation to smooth and rub shoulders with the incoming administration, as he did with the old administration when he was very much part of that brigade And he was. We've all seen the video of Russell and P. Diddy rubbing shoulders together, having a buddy friendship there. So I applaud David Icke for his absolute bare knuckle honesty on this. And it must really, really hurt Russell that he uses this phrase, a professional shill and arse licker, to the Trump Musk MAGA partnership. Right, but there's something else that you need to see, and I'll just bring it up. We're just going to skip through it now, because the next section of what he says, it's not this one, it's this one. For me, this is probably the best proof that if what you're seeing right now and what you saw with Trump's re-administration and reappointment as president, I think this is the best example of why it is a one-party state. He uses the one-party state phrase, but I used uniparty. I think that uniparty or one-party state is one of the same. So it really doesn't matter what puppet is in. And it's almost like revolving chairs, isn't it, as to who is in the seat of power. And after a time, someone has to then drop out of that seat of power, and they try to tell you it's through democracy that they choose a new leader, but it's not. It's not democracy that decides who gets in, but it's all been preordained. So the funder of J.D. Vance was most likely a globalist player from the BlackRock empire. And as you know, and as I've repeatedly said, BlackRock is the top pyramid of power. And if you're the top pyramid of power, then anything that's below you is supporting you and keeping you as the top power. That's how it works. And it's that top power that decided that they probably could not fool the American people any longer by keeping the Democrats in power. It was just so obvious that they didn't know how to govern a nation. They just made too many mistakes. And so it was beneficial, probably at that point, to bring Trump back and to put around Trump other globalist powerhouse thinking people that is going to keep BlackRock's empire, that top pyramid of power, at the pinnacle of success. Because the alternative was that people would believe that democracy was well and truly buried and dead. But they can't now say that. They can't say democracy is buried and dead because they believe that they've chosen Trump above Harris and made an informed decision to put him back into the White House to represent their needs going forward. But quite honestly, if it's a uniparty system, it really doesn't matter who's in the seat of power in the United States or in the UK. It matters not to the global powerful people that are orchestrating world events, because to them they are just puppets, and they can be moved to the left and they can be moved to the right like a marionette. You've seen how they operate a marionette. And as a kid I used to go to some of those shows, and I used to see how they would orchestrate those marionette puppets, and if they wanted to lift their left hand up, they'd do that. If they wanted to lift the right hand up, they'd do that. They wanted to walk them to the left to do that, and they would make them do exactly what they wanted, all in the name of entertainment. There is a lot of similarity between what the global powers in the world are doing with these earthly puppet representatives to get them to do exactly what they wanted and what they've always wanted. But they will always stay in power. And when Trump runs aground, when he comes to the end of his term and people are clamoring for a new figurehead to represent America, they'll only ever choose someone that they can manipulate like a marionette puppet. They're not likely to ever put someone in the top job who they haven't got control of. And David Icke, he can see this. That's why he refers to it as a one-party state. So neither the elected billionaire should have the power over government that they do and try. Yeah, but they do. They say they shouldn't, but they do. Money talks every language, doesn't it? It bridges all boundaries. That kind of wealth is something that they'll never likely to want to see diminish. And there's no reason why that wealth would diminish if they've always got their puppets in place. So Trump is just another puppet, just as if Kamala Harris had won and she'd have got in, she would have been another puppet, just like Biden was a puppet. Come to the UK now. Keir Starmer, just a puppet for the global players. So I think there's more evidence now than there's ever been that we are looking at a uni-party system that is meant to be in place and is kept in place by the top pyramid. And he mentions the Bilderberg group, doesn't he? In his, you can see that that David Icke is particularly upset with Russell's stance. You can see this because he's probably saying to himself, well, look at what happened to me when I had a top job at the BBC and I was a sports commentator. And I used to watch his commentary when he was doing the sports. I used to think he was a good journalist. And when he made a stance and he started to say the things that he said at the time, and this was so many years ago, the media very, very quickly painted him as an oddball. And they got everybody, I'm talking about your average Joe on the street, they got everybody to look at him upon the same. Oh, that David Icke he's completely lost his marbles. But he was just one of the early Proclamation kings, if not the Proclamation king, which you can't say about Russell, because Russell was late to the party. And because he's so late to the party, that was because he still had one foot in the club. You know what I mean? The One Eye Club. He was still a fervent supporter of his left-wing ideals. And so it took him quite a long time to leave that behind. Whereas David Icke very quickly left behind his former life and took up this proclamation messaging to the UK at first, and then he took it to the world. So if you're going to judge these two, I think you need to judge them on their early predictions. And for me, there's only one that stands out as being one that's worth their salt, and that's David Icke. I don't think you could say otherwise. as much as we all like Russell, and we do, does have a nice personality, and he's a comedian, and you can get to like those kind of people. Whereas David Icke is not a comedian, is he? But you can only judge the two on their past results and their present results. And to sum this up, I think you can't criticise what David Icke has put down here. And I think that's why Russell was so rattled by it and some of the language that they used. So if I was just trying to sum this up really quickly, I would say, yes, we've all been duped, both sides of the Atlantic, on both elections. We've all been duped. But now look at other countries with their elections. And again, you've been duped. Canada recently, they've replaced one globalist for another globalist. This is BlackRock keeping their people in the top pyramid, supporting them. They're always ever going to place someone in a position like that is adding to their wealth and not taking away from it. So can you see now why the argument of a one-party state and a uni-party system has got more credibility, and more people now should be looking into this? And the sooner you realise that you've all been played, we've all been played, all of us, Russell included, because he's smoozing now, isn't he, in Mar-a-Lago, so he's been played. The sooner you realise that this is more like the George Orwell film, where there's that the pretend confrontation between, you remember it, don't you, the film, and also the book, and they have to invent that war that's going on in the background, which is, there's no real war going on. It's to keep the people in their place, make them believe there's a war going on. You have to have a common enemy. And that's why they created a two-state in this country, with the Labour, Conservatives, in America, Democrats, Republicans. You have to create a division. By creating that division, you keep the people occupied, and you keep them hating each other, despising each other. I think this is just something that man has done from a very, very early time, and is not likely to change. He's always going to create an enemy within his own country. And that's, for me, why the uniparty system, which is no different from the judicial system, exactly the same. If you look at a judicial system, you have a prosecution and a defence. And most of the time, they're friends. At the top level, very, very friendly at the top level. In the judicial system, it's the same thing. And then they role reverse. And so they take it in turns at being prosecution and defence. So who do you think in America now, in the role reversal, is prosecution? The Democrats. But before the election, where Trump got in, they weren't prosecution, were they? They were defence. They were defending everything that the Republicans were saying. But now, it's turned around. People, it's just a game. They're just taking us all for fools. So I think everybody should thank David Icke for putting this message together and sending it directly to Russell. And we know that this definitely rattled Russell. We know that. He didn't particularly like being called an arse licker. But people, is he? Is he a professional shill? Is David Icke right when he's been right about so many other things in the past? And that is why David Icke will continue to be the original Proclamation conspiratorial king. He's bloody well earned it.